Hi there. In this screencast, we are going to look into arrays in JavaScript. How do we declare arrays and how do we use arrays in JavaScript? A quick refresher on what do you mean by arrays. Now we have studied about variables. Variables are a location inside the memory where you can store values. They are named locations. That means you can name that variable and then assign a value to that location which will be stored in the memory, and then you can retrieve that value later on during different parts of your programming. In this case over here, arrays are similar to variables in a sense that they are named variables. The difference between a normal variable and an array is an array can store multiple values with the same name. So let me give you just this depiction of an array. You see over here, this array is called, use the same name num. Okay, and it can store different values in different locations, but they are named with a single variable name. Okay, so over here each one of them can store different values. So over here we have 28760, which is this is the first element, second, the third, fourth and fifth. Now arrays usually start from 0 and then go all the way along to the last length minus 1. So over here we have 5 elements, so the indexes or the index of each of these elements will start from 0 and go until length minus 1, which is 5 minus 1, and it is 4. So this is how an array looks like. Now we are going to see how we can create this array in JavaScript, an array similar to this in JavaScript. What is the syntax and how do we do that? Let's start with, there are different ways of declaring an array or defining an array in JavaScript. I have listed the 4 common methods. You can use either one of them, whichever suits you, but we're going to see how we do it in all of them. Okay, now let's start with something like, let's say I want to create an array where I want to store some numbers. Okay, so similar to what I do in JavaScript for variables, I create a variable var and assign a name to it. Let's say num, the one that we just saw earlier, and I'm going to say equal to. Now the first way of declaring an array is declaring it with an infinite size. Where this way I'm going to use new array. Now array is actually a class defined in JavaScript which allows us to create an array. Now infinite size means I don't define the size early on, so I leave it empty and I do that later on. So this way now I have an array where it's just a declaration of the array. I haven't initialized it with any values, so the array is empty right now. Now in this case I can assign values to each one of those indexes in the array by using the square brackets. So over here I'll use the square brackets, use the index 0 and assign it a value, let's say 5. Okay, similarly I'm going to just again go ahead and say num1 equal to 10, and then again I'm going to say num3 2 equal to 3. Okay, so this is how you can declare and define the array. And this way you don't have to define the size, you just declare an empty array and then you start assigning values to it. Okay, now before we go on to the other ways of declaration, let's see how it looks like this array when we print it. So what I'm going to do over here is just go down a little bit and then show you how we can print these arrays. Now over here, let's say there are different ways of printing an array. The most common one is using the for loop. Now there are different ways of using the for loop. We're going to see the for loop that we studied in our previous screencast. That is, I'm going to say for, and I use var I equal to 0, I is less than something, I'm leaving it empty for now, and I plus plus. Okay, and then inside this I'm going to print the array. So I'm going to use document dot write and I'm going to print the array which is num, which is inside num, and the index will become I because it keeps on changing as I go on. And so this I will be replaced by 0, 1, 2, 3 until the end of the array, and then it will display all these elements. And I also want to have spaces between them, or I can just simply have say break between them, like one below the other. or I prefer to have spaces between them. Okay, I need to have spaces between them, so I'm just going to say this. Usually in HTML this space doesn't work, so I'm going to just use a break in this case. Okay, now so what we are going to do right now is save this, and I'm going to see how it looks like. But before that, I didn't complete my declaration. I initialize the value of I equal to 0 because the index always starts from 0. Now the second one, I need to know the length of this array. Now the length can be hard coded because you know that the length is 0 1 2 3. That's the length is 3. Okay, the length is 3. But how to get it dynamically without actually counting them, because the array can change the size during the program. So what I can say is you have a property of an array called length, which we can use to get the length of an array. So the name of my array is num. So what I will do is I'll just say num dot length, the same as we saw in strings. The same property works with arrays. So I'm just going to say num.length, and it will automatically get the length of the array and then go from the beginning till the length. So see, I'm just using less than. I'm not using less than equal to, so that means it will not go to till the last ends, because I'm starting from 0. As you saw over here in this example, it should start from 0 and go to 4, which is length minus 1. So if I say less than, it will not be equal to 5. It will just stop at 4. So that's what I want. And in this case, that's it. Let's go ahead and see what my array looks like. When I refresh it, you see 5, 10, and 3. That's what I defined earlier, right? So this looks good. This is how we can print the array that we want. Now let's declare the array in a different format over here. Now this way, now I can predefine the size I need of the array. For example, I want to say I'm defining an array num2, where I'm going to say new array the same way, but instead of leaving it empty, I can actually predefine it with a size. Let's say I'm going to say 5 in this case. Okay, and then I can assign the values, where in this one it will be num1 of 0, which is going to be, let's say, something 10, and then I'm going to say num1 of 1, which is going to be, let's say, 12, and then num1 of 2, which is going to be, let's say, 3, and it's a long journey because I put a long number, and then 15, and then I'm going to say num1 of 4, which should be the last one because it's length minus 1, and I'm going to say 6 or 8. Okay, now this should be it. Now what happens, like for example in this case, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just go ahead and print the array. So instead of saying num, I'm going to use num1 and num1.length. Okay, let's save this and then go back and refresh our browser. And what happened? Did I do something wrong? num1 num1.length. It's like num1. Okay, let's go back again and see how it looks like. So you can see the list of all the elements that I just defined. Now let's say I make a mistake. I assign, because the size of my array is now predefined and it's set to 5, which is 5 elements, 0 to 4. So let's say I use an index which is not part of what I'm allowed to use. Okay, I'm just going to save this and then say refresh it. You will see that it adapts it automatically. It's increasing the size automatically. So for example over here, even though I predefined the size to 5, I can actually increase it without allowing it to, without making an explicit declaration that I want to increase it. Like for example, I'm going to say 6 again, and this time I'm going to assign 12 to it, and then save this, and then go back and then refresh it. You can see it's still increasing. Okay, so this is one of the good things about this, that it automatically keeps on increasing. Okay, now the other way around, let's see the other way around. Suppose I don't have these. And instead of using the length, suppose I use a specific number. Let's say I say 10 over here. Now see how it fares in a case where I am requesting a value which doesn't exist over here. See, the size of my array is now 5. It starts from 0 to 4, and I'm trying to go till 10. So there are locations which are not actually part of the array, but I'm still trying to access it. Okay, let's see how it fares in this case. Okay, I'm just going to refresh that. See, it says undefined. Undefined means this is actually there is no location, and the location doesn't have any value at present. Okay, so this is how it fares with something that is missing. It will not stop your program, it will just give you an error, or just reply it you with an message says undefined. Okay, so that's it. That's about how to do this in this way. Now let's go and see the other way of doing arrays, which is initializing it. Up until now we were just declaring them first and then initializing them later on. Let's say we want to do a different way, where I want to just declare and initialize at the same time. So this, let's say I'm going to use num2 and use new array, and I'm going to use the brackets, and this I can initialize the array inside it, inside the brackets itself. Like for example, over here I can say 2, 3, 6, 7, 10. Okay, for the something like that, and then I can simply just go down, use num2 dot length, and then I'm just going to print out num2, save this and run it. This should give me the list of my arrays. Okay, so in this case I don't want, if I know what is going to be part of my array, I can actually do it over here without declaring it first and initializing it later on. It works. It works in case of your application. Whichever suits your application, you can use it. If you don't know what you want to put in the array, you want to put something later on based on the user input, you can actually declare it and then initialize it later on. Or the other way around, you know what you need to put inside the array, the initial values at least, so that you can go ahead and use this. Okay, now there are a few another way of doing that. Up till now I was using this class array, which is predefined in JavaScript, and I was actually passing on those functions. Now in this case, this way, these two ones, in object-oriented programming, whenever I pass a parameter along with the name of the class when creating an object of the class, this is called a constructor. Okay, over here, see the constructor, if I just put one value, it assumes that this one value is the length of the array. And if I pass on more than one value, it assumes that these are initializers. These are the initial values of the array. Now this is called overloading. Now these are basic concepts of object-oriented programming, and this should be clear to people who have taken the course on object-oriented programming. So that's the case. I'm using a class called array, and I'm passing parameters or overloading the constructor function. So let's say I don't want to use the constructor. In this case, you can also define an array without using the constructor function. In this case, I'm going to say num3 and let's say equal to, and I start just declaring the array using square brackets over here. So equal to, let's say I want to have 2. I have to separate them by commas, and say 3, 5, 10, 15. Okay, and then I can just save this, go back again over here. Instead of num2, this time I'm going to say num3, and okay, just going ahead over here, num3, save this, and then I'm going to refresh my browser and see how it looks like. Okay, this is my new array. So there are different ways of declaration. So we can define it with, if you don't know the size, you can use this. If you know the size, you can use this. And if you know the size as well as the initial elements within that array, you can use this or this. It depends upon whichever suits you. This one is less verbose, less items to type, so this one is preferable, and this one is also not bad. Okay, so these are the 4 basic ways of declaring an array. Now we saw one of the method of printing the array is using a for loop. Now for loop has two different ways we can use the parameters or the variables to loop through the array. The first one, as we saw, is this one. The other way is using the for loop, the same loop, but in this case we use something called as the variable in. Either use the keyword in and the name of the array. Let's say I want to go to the num1 array that we define. So in this case, I'm going to say var j in num1. So I'm using this as my variable, as my looping variable, and then okay. And this one, inside that, I'm just going to go ahead and say the same thing, document dot write, and I'm going to say num1 j. Everything remains the same. I'll tell you the difference in a little while. And I'm just going to use this break. I'm going to just separate them by writing something like this. Okay. Now let's save this, and then I'm going to go back and refresh my browser, and you can see that, okay, I have to put a break over here in the beginning. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just going to put it over here so that it looks neater. Okay, that's why. Okay, so you can see now that they do the same thing. They do the same thing right now, at least. So let's say I'm going to do the same one over here, num1, so that you can see the difference. Num1 over here as well, and then I'm going to refresh this. You can see that they do the same thing. They print out the array. The only thing is I'm writing little over here. Now, what's the difference between these two types of for loops? You see, in this loop, I'm using the conventional way of actually defining or declaring the looping variable, which is I in this case, and then the condition which says that I should be less than length, and whenever this condition is false, I want to stop looping, and then I++, this is the upgrade statement. In this case, I'm just saying that j is my looping variable, and j should loop for all elements in num1. Now the difference between these two is how many times it will loop. See, this loop will loop, this for loop will loop from the beginning of the array to the end of the array. Whereas in this case, I can actually control how many times it can loop. I can stop it and before it goes to the end of the array. So that, for example, over here, I can say that I don't want to loop through all these elements. I just want to loop through the first two elements. So I can just actually go ahead and put over here 2. Okay. And then when you refresh it, you'd see that I just get the first two elements over here, and in this case I cannot change it because it's actually this for loop can only be used for looping all elements. Whenever you want to loop for all elements inside an array, you can use this. It's a short syntax, and it's most of the time when you use an array, you are planning to use all the elements, so this might work with you. But in some cases, you don't want to loop through all the elements. You know where do you want to loop from. For example, if you have an different initial and a condition value, you can still use this. And the other way also, for example, if you want to loop the variable in a reverse, loop the array in the reverse direction, this might also not help, but this might help, but just by using I minus minus and using I as the length. For example, I can show it to you over here. I can say num1 dot length. I start with the length, and then I should not say length because length now becomes maximum, so that -1, and I want to loop until I is less than 0, less than equal to 0 in this case. Okay, and then I'm going to use the condition I minus minus, and you can see that. Just go ahead and refresh this. You can okay, what happened? Initial hiccup. Let me just go there and see what happened. Variable I is num1 dot length -1. Okay, so I'm going to start from 4 and until I is less than equal to 0. That works for me. No, it should be greater than 0. Sorry, greater than equal to 0. Yeah, my bad. I'm going to refresh this. You see now the array is displayed in the reverse order. In this case, this works. I mean, I can play with the different ways. I want to display the array, but in the other way, you can just display the whole contents from the beginning till the end. Okay, so whatever suits your needs, it should be used. Okay. There is one more way of printing an array. There is a function in JavaScript for arrays called join. Now we can actually convert the whole array into a string and then display it. Let's say I want to do the same thing. I'm going to say var str, that is my string, which I want to convert the array into, and then say num dot join, and then inside the brackets I want to use the separator. For example, I'm joining multiple elements of the array. How do I want them to be separated? I can use a comma. This is called the separator. This comma is the separator. I can use a space as well. It's up to you to define that. And then we can just simply go ahead and document dot write. Okay, I'm going to use break dot and then str. Okay, not dot, sorry, plus. I get confused. Okay, now I'm going to save this, and then you just go ahead, refresh your page. You can see your array displayed as 5, 10, comma 3, separated by commas. If you want a space after the comma, you can also do that. Refresh that, and then you get it. So this is how you can actually do that. You can actually convert the whole array into a string and then display it by whatever separation you want it to be separated by. Okay, so this is also another way of doing that. So these are some of the popular ways of printing the array. You can use the traditional way, traditional for loop, or you can use this shortened for loop for looping through all elements from the beginning till the end of the array, or you can use simply convert the array into a string and then display that string. Okay, now so these are some of the basic ways of printing the arrays. And let's go back and see some basic array functions. We saw some of them over here, some properties and some functions. The first property I just showed you was the length property we saw over here. Now this length property actually gives us the length of an array. Okay, it's a property because I'm not using parentheses beside it. If I use parentheses, then that means it is a function. Parentheses is the brackets. Okay, I'm just using the word parentheses. It looks good. Apart from that, we just saw also another function called join. I'm using join to actually convert the whole array into a string and then display that string over here. Now, there are a few functions that are also nice to know. So one of the first functions that I'm going to use is concatenate. Concatenate allows you to join, or let's say join or combine multiple arrays together. Okay, now how do we do that? There's a function, and again we have a function called concat, which allows you to join multiple arrays. Now we saw that we have multiple arrays declared over here. I have num, num1, num2, and num3. Suppose I want to join all of them together into one array. Well, I can do that. So let's say I want to say num dot concat, and then I can pass on the name of the other ones I want to join. Num1, num2, num3. That was it, right? And that's it. And then I'm simply going to go ahead and display my array. I'm going to use this. Just going to copy this and paste it over here so that I'm just going to use that, and I'm going to use num. Okay, I'm going to save this, and let's go ahead and see what it looks like. Okay, it just gave me the last three. I don't know what happened. Okay, num1, num2, num3, concat. Strange, I don't know what happened. Let's see. Still giving me 5, 10, 3. Something wrong with the function. This is there. J num document dot write num of j. Okay. It's just giving me num. It's not actually combining that. Okay. Okay, I might be wrong with the syntax. Let me just go ahead and see the syntax of it. I'm not sure what happened. Just going to see the syntax for this. Say concat. Okay, r1 concat value 1. I'm doing the same thing. Okay. Now you have to assign it to something else. Okay. Okay. Let's do that. Let's say var n, a new array, and then I'm going to say in n, and then I'm going to do the same thing. Maybe it's a size thing, I don't know. Okay, now let's go ahead and see how it looks like this way. Now it concatenated the two arrays together, so now you can add as many arrays as you want. For example, over here I can have num1, I can add num2, and I can add num3. Okay, and then you don't need to just put arrays as well. You can also put values, as you saw over here in this. You can actually put values as well. You can actually add more values to the existing array. You can add concatenate with the values. Okay, now that should be it, right? Yeah, yeah. To see, you have a list of all the array elements combined together, all of them. Okay, so that's one of the functions. You can use concatenate to join multiple arrays together. There are some other functions as well, reversing an array. We can use something to reverse an array. For example, I say where r equal to num dot reverse as a function. So this way, let's say I want to display it again from here. Okay, I want to separate them so that it's easier for us to read when this new array is actually starting. So I'm going to say over here, save it, and then reverse the array, and then display the reversed array. In this case, refresh this, you'll see that my array now is reversed. Why is the whole array reversed? I'm not sure. I used num, right? I initially did something. Num.concat. Okay, still doing concatenation for the whole num, so I'm not sure what. Initially it was not giving me that, and now it's giving me that. Strange, right? Oh, not strange. I'm the one who did that mistake. Should be num of j. Okay, yeah, that's about it. That should do it. Let's refresh that, and then, wow, it's undefined. What did I do? Maybe I increased the size of somewhere. Just said reverse, right? Just reverse. J in n. This is getting annoying. Small mistakes. Okay, now this way it will work. So now my first initial array was 5, 10, 3, and now it's 10, 3, 5. So it's reversing the order of the elements inside the array. Okay, there are some different various functions. You saw those functions over there, and this documentation. You can see that the array has almost 26 functions. 26 functions. Okay, you can go through them if you need, but these are some of the basic ones that we use in day-to-day life. Okay, there are a few functions as well. For example, if you know stacks allow you to add element to the end of the array or remove the element from the end of the array. Okay, so it's like last in first out, so LIFO list. You can use that as well over here. Stacks, for example, and it deletes the element. I mean, when it removes it, you delete the element, so your array is changed. Okay, so I'm just going to add some documentation over here so that we don't forget what we are doing. So over here I was just reversing the array. You can also use push and pop. If you want to treat your array as a stack, you don't need to like explicitly ask them to be treated as a stack. You can just use the method. It works like a normal stack. So let's say I want to print out document.write. Again, I want to like separate that so that I want to separate them over here, and this way I'm going to say num dot push an element, let's say 10. Okay, num dot push 10. I cannot use pop. Can't use this one. Okay. Okay, num dot push 10. This was, and then I can use document dot write to actually pop the element and display what element was there, which I just pushed. Okay, and this pop. Okay, now you will see that my initial array has num array is 5, 10, and 3. So if I push another element, this element will be of index 3, which will go at the end over here. And then if I pop it, it should remove 10, not 3, not 5, and not this 10 over here in the middle. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what it looks like. Refresh this, you'll see that it's popping 10. If I use the same statement again, it's going to pop the element before it. Let's go refresh that. It says it popped 10 first, and then it popped 5. So it's like from the bottom. So the last one inserted, and then it's popping up. Why is it popping up 5? Did I reverse the array? But I reversed it in a different array, right? Num.reverse doesn't work like that way. So it's like in reverse order right now. If I'm using this, I'm reversing the order of the array itself. Okay, that's fine. Okay. So what else do we have? So that's about it. That's about push and pop that can be used. It's reversing the array, and that's concatenation and printing of the arrays and declaring different forms of arrays in JavaScript. Now, we just saw we created a number of arrays, but all of these arrays were integer arrays. Now it doesn't matter, as I told you, JavaScript doesn't really is concerned about the type of the variable, so you can actually have an array of text, array of floating point numbers, or Boolean array. Okay, so it just depends upon the value you are using over here. Okay, so let's say there are different types of arrays in JavaScript. These are whenever I have an array of the same type. Usually in most of the programming languages, when you create an array, you provide the data type so that the elements of the array will belong to that data type. But in JavaScript, we don't have a data type, so that means the array can have elements belonging to different data types. Okay, now this array where the data types are all of the same type is usually referred to as an homogeneous array. Homogeneous array means they are all of the same type. Even though you don't mention it, they are all of the same type. In another case over here, we can also create an array, heterogeneous array. And a heterogeneous array is an array where elements are of different types. So what I'm going to do is, suppose I want to just copy this. I don't want to write this again. If I can copy this thing over here and this over here, I'm just going to rename this array to, let's say, het. And then I'm going to say het of 1 this way. This one we can have, let's say, I'm going to use text. For the second one, I'm going to use a string. For the third one, I'm going to use a Boolean. Okay, and for the fourth one, I'm going to use a floating point number, 15.45. I don't care about this one, so I'm just going to use another string. Okay, so this is it. This is a het array where the types of elements inside it are of different types, and it works. It allows, JavaScript allows you to do that. Okay, so let's print that. Let's print how it looks like. I'm going to use this. Okay, I'm going to use this, and then instead I'm going to change this where j in het1. Then I'm going to display het1. Okay, save this, and I'm going to go back, refresh that. Okay, something wrong. Okay, it's okay. It's a scope variable, but I'm not sure what happened. In line 83, I have I didn't close this. Okay, let's see. I'm just going to close this, go to the end. You see 10, hello, true, 14, 15.45, and world. So it really doesn't matter what type I'm using inside the array. So these type of arrays are usually referred to as heterogeneous arrays, where they belong to, the elements belong to different data types. It's allowed in JavaScript. Okay. Apart from that, we also have multi-dimensional arrays. The concept is the same. A multi-dimensional array is usually uh, let's say I had this graphic as well. This is a two-dimensional array. A two-dimensional array usually has more than one. In a single dimension array we just saw over here, this one, we have one row, and that becomes a single dimensional array or a normal array. Okay. A multi-dimensional array can have more than one dimension. This is a two-dimensional array which has two dimensions. I added one more column to it, and it becomes a matrix. We have rows, multiple rows, and multiple columns. So we can have multiple rows stuck together, and that becomes a two-dimensional array. Okay, and we can have, see over here, row. The first index will be the row, and the second index will be the column. So over here you see the 0th row and the first column, the 0th row and the second column, and this way. Now, how do we define that? How do you define something like this in JavaScript? Is we can actually go ahead and define that. Let's say var, say md array equal to let's use that definition, the square brackets. Now, in the square bracket, see, if I use one square bracket, that means I'm using it to define the array itself. So I can use another bracket inside to define each row of that array. Let's say, for example, I can say 4, 5, and 10, and another one would be 15, 4, and 32. Okay, that should be it. Now, this is my multi-dimensional array. This is my multi-dimensional array. Now, how do I print it? It's a little different than what we did earlier. Okay, in this case, I have to use the for loop, but two loops in this case, because I have two dimensions right now. So I have to use two different variables, starting from the first to the end. So I'm going to use something like this. Just go ahead, copy this, print over here. Now, for example, I say var I equal to num. I'm not using num, I'm using md array. Okay, I equal to 0, I is less than 3, I plus plus, and then inside that I again have to use another dimension, loop through another dimension. So where j equal to 0, j is less than 3, and j plus plus. Okay, this is the second dimension, and then inside that I can actually print whatever I'm looking for over here. Okay, then I will just change this to md array. The first index is I, and the second index will be j, which is my column. Okay, then I'm going to break it. I'm going to separate this so that we can see it. Now, if you want to display it as a matrix, there's a cool trick for that. In that case, if you want to display it as a matrix, what I do is, usually when you are displaying an array element one by one, you don't use a break. Use a break only when you finish the whole row. So you can use a break over here, and then over here you just need space, right? You just need space, so you can just plus and then allow a slit space between them. Okay, and this way it will look like a matrix when you print it. Okay, I did a mistake again, and this time I don't know what mistake I did. I think it's a problem with my array declaration. I'm sure about that. Console is 95, and yep, it is. Okay, or I don't even need a comma. I'm not sure about that. So let's see how it looks like. Yeah, it looks good now. Okay, so yeah, I should have put a break over here so that it looks like a matrix. So you can just go ahead and Add a break over here. Sorry about that. Just refresh that. Yeah, see, now it's 4, 5, 10, 15, 4, 32. So that's how it goes. Like that's how it goes. Okay, so that's a multi-dimensional array. This one is a two-dimensional array. Actually, you can add more than one dimension as well. You can have a three-dimensional, four-dimensional arrays, as many dimensions as you like. Okay. Now, another concept in JavaScript is that of a jagged array. Now, jagged array allows, see, over here we saw that in a multi-dimensional array, you were having an array where you have all the dimensions of the array, the rows are same, like a matrix. So, for example, this one is a 3 by 3 array. Now, sometimes we don't have that. Sometimes we are looking for an array where we just have two columns, and let's say, for example, over here, I will just copy this for a jagged interpretation. Let's say jagged array, and this way I can say the first row will have 4, 5, 10. The second one will just have 15, and the third one will have, let's say, 10, 12, 40, and 16. So you see, they are not consistent. They are not consistent. In each row, there are different types of elements. Over here, they were same. It's 3, 3. Okay. Over here, you have 3, 1, and then 4. So they are not aligned. The matrix doesn't look aligned. If you look at the output, you can see that it's like very strange to do that, because the thing is, I don't know the length of my array. Let's usually what happens when you get for the length of an array, you get it as two parts. You just go ahead and do that over here. So I'm going to use 4. There will be a lot of undefined, as you might have guessed it. So this is again a mistake, right? I don't know what I did. I didn't close the brackets over here. Okay. This way, you see, it goes 4, 5, 10, 15, 4, 32. Okay. Yeah. I keep on messing up with this one. Jag. Yep. Okay, still displaying. No idea why this is not working. But it's the same concept. That should work. Okay, I'm not going to waste time. This video is getting too long, so I'm going to leave it up to you. Just like this is just a simple concept saying that the rows inside the array or a two-dimensional array don't have to be of the same dimension. Okay, so that's about it in arrays in JavaScript. Okay, see you later.